just to respect the time of the folks that are on the call already, I think we should probably go ahead and begin, and we can wait for Mark and Jock to join us as they're able.
Yep, that's totally fine.
Great. Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll call to order our meeting of the Private Forest Accord Mitigation Advisory Committee, August 12th at noon. Andy, do you want to get us started with a roll call, please?
Yes, I'll call off your name. Please respond in the affirmative if you are present. Chad Washington.
Here.
Joe Liebezite.
Here.
Scott Lightcap.
Here.
Courtney Griesel.
Here.
Jock Dalton. Sherry Johnson.
Here.
Mark Stern. Mark Grenbremer.
Here.
Jennifer Weichel.
Here.
Kate Wells. And Sam. Bill, I'm sorry, Bill Bringen, can you remind me? I don't have it in my notes. I apologize.
Yeah, it's Brignon here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Chad, I'm gonna hand it back to you. Thanks, Bill.
All right, thank you, Andy. With that, I think we all received meeting materials, including the agenda last week from Andy. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Any requests for additions, edits? All right. Hearing none, I think we can consider that agenda approved, which would then lead us to the public comment period. Andy, did we receive any requests for public comment? You did distribute the written comment.
Yes, yeah, I distributed written one, and just for public record, it's available at pfagrants.com, as with all the meeting materials. We did have a request for public comment at the start of this meeting. I'm not seeing them on right now. It was a continuation of the written testimony, Chad. I don't know if maybe at the end of the meeting, if we wanted to open it back up again, if they end up popping on, but I connected with them yesterday. There was the intent.
Okay, well, we've got on our agenda through 10 minutes after the hour. So we can go ahead and allow that if they join us between now and then.
Okay.
In the meantime, we can all sit here quietly, or we can move on and come back if they join.
I might be getting I don't see any emails. Let me just check my emails if there's any. If we wanted to, we could move forward with Sarah's budget update while we see what's going on, while we wait for it.
Great, I see Sarah's joined us. So Sarah, are you ready for that?
I am happy to. Good afternoon now, everybody. Sarah Reif, Habitat Division Administrator. Good to see you all today. Thank you, Andy, for pulling that slide up. This is an update on where the funds currently stand. I'll walk you through this table. Coming into the 25-27 biennium, the PFA fund balance was the number up top, the 25.6 million. We estimate over the course of this whole biennium between the 10 million in general fund that was allocated this biennium, and then a rough estimate of 5 million in harvest tax, and a rough estimate of 2 million that we anticipate accruing over the biennium in interest based on past performance. We're estimating the amount of deposits at 17 million, and the emphasis on estimate that I'm putting in there is that the 5 million harvest tax is based on the Senate Bill 1501 called for up to 2.5 million in harvest tax revenue. However, actual receipts have not been quite generating that much, so it is probably a little bit less. But bringing in our beginning fund balance and our anticipated deposits, the estimated available funds over the course of this whole biennium is 42.6 million. When you subtract out our administrative costs, what we keep as a contingency reserve of $500,000, the projects that have been awarded in the 23, 24, 25 solicitation and payments made, the remaining funds, or the total funds committed is around 28 million. So if you take the the subtotal up top, the 42 million, the subtotal in the middle, the 28 million, and just do the quick subtraction, it leaves around 14.4 million in the bank for the private forest accord grant program prior to your next solicitation in November. So that is what the fund currently has to work with. I'll pause there in case there's any questions from the chair or committee members.
So are we expecting to receive ongoing funding at that same $10 million general fund contribution?
The agency thought that the 10 million that we received in the 25-27 biennium was was part of our base budget going forward. So we had assumed that we were getting 10 million. We recently heard from DAS CFO and LFO that that was our misread and that it was just a one-time allocation. Under a better budget scenario, the agency would have included a policy option package in our agency requested budget for another 10 million, again requesting that it be made permanent. However, with the general fund outlook being what it is, and a more constrained budget environment, the instruction that agencies were given was to not request any new general fund, that any general fund requests were going to need to be budget neutral, which would mean that we would have to take it from somewhere else in the agency's existing budget, which for us is physicians. So you won't see the PFA 10 million request in ODFW's agency requested budget that is being submitted to the governor's office. However, we've flagged this issue for the governor's office, and will continue to work towards solutions and or plan for a smaller balance in the grant program if that's what it comes to.
Thanks for
Joe.
providing that background.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm a bearer of bad news there. Joe.
Yeah, my question was exactly the same as Chad, so thank you. But I guess I just want to hear more about like what happened in the interpretation. It says like you were initially, when this 10 million fund was established as part of the original grant, you thought it was, or sorry, the original program, you thought it was continuing.
Mm-hmm.
So where that miscommunication, that's a pretty big miscommunication. Like, where did that happen along the way? I'm just kind of curious what happened. If you can give us some more insight.
Ken Loffink, our COO, and I have questioned ourselves about 1 million times on that, Joe, of like, how did we read that? And the language is fairly silent on continuation or not. I think because the agency had requested that it be made part of our base budget, that given the silence on it, we assumed that it was. Both CFO and LFO, we followed up recently, and both CFO and LFO confirmed for us that even though it's silent on that, the intent was that it be one time. So, lesson learned on our part about assumptions.
Just to follow up, what do you see as the repercussions then moving forward? You're going to try to allocate something, but what if What if we can't get anything allocated? What does that mean?
It means that the grant program will be operating off a significantly smaller budget and will make a request in future budget years.
All right, thanks.
Courtney.
Oh, I'm
Sarah,
kind of, I
just
guess,
real quickly, what it could mean is that you'd be relying on just the harvest tax revenue. Is that correct?
Yes, thank
Plus
you.
the
Thank
interest
you.
that's in there.
That's right.
And that harvest
That's
tax
right.
revenue would be coming so long as the private forest accord agreement holds, which is dependent on the issuance of the HCP and the associated ITP.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's correct.
my question was in a similar place to Joe, which was just pushing harder into that conclusion. And I think it was maybe based in the PFA negotiated terms, which I think were very explicit about it as intended ongoing. And so I think I was trying to sort that same, which is when did silence on it constitute a movement away from what was explicit? But it sounds like it's been tested in all those spaces, and it is just where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the legislative intent of the Ways and Means Committee. So if LFO and CFO are in agreement that that was the intent of the committee's decision in legislature, then that's what we have.
And does that show up in like recorded minutes, or is there a space? Those
I
are the
have
things in my
not-
head. You don't have to answer that.
They're great. They're great questions. I have not gone back and rewatched the
No,
committee
yeah.
sessions. Yeah.
And Sarah, just for background, there is a pathway that you could receive the funding if it were to be included in the governor's recommended budget. Is that correct?
That is one pathway. Another pathway is that it legislature chooses to do so in the legislative budget.
So although it is not great news right now, it is certainly not decided that we will be unfunded.
Right. Right. So looking at, 14.4 remaining at the moment, your decision of funding level for the 2026 fall solicitation would we would recommend, maybe half of the remaining, or, you decide, but you've got the 14.4 to work with, and then thinking about wanting to retain some amount for the 2027 solicitation. And you can anticipate, as Chad said, even if there's no general fund inputs in the 27-29 biennium, you can still anticipate as much as 5 million in harvest tax revenue into the fund over the 27-29 biennium.
That's important to say it that way, right, Sarah? As much as, because the receipts haven't been tracking like exactly what that would be, but it certainly would not be more than.
Right.
And then that interest payment is also based off of a higher fund balance. So we wouldn't be able to expect the same level of an interest earned on that as well, right?
Likely not. Yes, that's correct. It is a combination of, yep, that's right. It would be based on the fund balance, then the interest earned.
Great. Sure, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, my question is, given the 14.4 what is the actual spendable out of that, given administrative costs and contingency reserves? Should the actual spendable be 13 something?
So the contingency reserve we pulled out before giving you that bottom line number. So
Okay.
that'd be there, just lurking in the background. And the yes, administrative costs for 27-29 would need to be covered. I don't have that total amount there. 35% of staff salaries. So Andy and Tiffany, 35% of staff salaries come out of the grant funds themselves. 65% are covered by general fund. And then we typically try to have a retainer available for DOJ costs and things like that. So yeah, we would have to, that is not accounted for in the 14.4, but
Okay, so but in the 25 to in the remainder of 25 to 27, those costs have already been calculated for that whole period.
Yes, for the 25-27, those have absolutely been accounted for. And then if you think about that 14.4 rolling over into 27-29, if you were to not allocate any additional anything to spend it on anything else, you could probably assume a similar administrative cost for 27-29 of something around 300,000. So
Okay,
safe bet is to think about maybe 14 million available.
Okay,
Good question.
And Courtney, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'll kind of just keep pushing in on this a little bit. I guess the place so the difference between the funding expectation that was in place when the intent of this program was sort of outlined, which included moving into this space of, land transactions and easements, and was sincerely framed under an assumption of the 10 million being recurring. And
Actually, Courtney, it was 20 million.
well, that's
supposed
right.
to be 20 million per biennium.
Per
And the
biennium,
most
that's right.
recent allocation went to 10 million for this biennium, and then looking forward, potentially 0.
Yep. No, and that's a good clarification because I think it makes the point even more so, which it's this program, the scale of this program and the intention of direct uplift and impact was scaled to match an expectation of the long-term funding and the mechanism to it. And so what we're talking about right now is actually a complete disconnect of those expectations. So it is now, while there are other pathways, those aren't assured. And so I think that is bringing me to a space of, I know we're deep into this discussion about easements and these additional tools for use of these grant dollars, but I'm just now very aware that we are no longer in connection to the scale of the resources we expected to be able to manage this breadth of ongoing conservation easements, and I'm starting to wonder if how that informs what we do in what is really a dwindling kind of resource that, if not funded as intended, might be shaped differently as a grant program. And do we continue expanding into expensive places that maybe the size of this grant program can't quite afford?
That's an interesting question. And just to make sure I'm on the same page, you're trying to say that the fund balance and what our allowable expenditures are had certain expectations, and now that the fund balance has been greatly reduced, do we maintain those expectations and what the program looks like, or do we try to make some adjustments in our expectations of
Something has to
types and
scale to
volume?
something else. That's right. Which adjusts, and that's my cerebral question, I guess.
Okay, well, starting off with really light, easy topics. So thank you for that question. It's one that we should talk about. Do you mind if we talk about
Table
that piece as we get into the land transaction guidance document review.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Yeah, I don't know where that fits, but yeah.
I think it'll fit right after our fall field trip update. Jock, you've got your hand up. Welcome.
I just to make sure, I had trouble connecting, so I came in late on this. So you're the funding, it looks like it's possibly drying up. So we're having to, as Courtney's saying, we're going to have to look at this again. So I'm just making sure that I understand that's how what's happened.
That's correct, Jock. I think that we can provide you the slide that was presented. Andy, maybe you can pull it up quickly.
Well, I saw the one that was up that had down at the bottom at 14.4. So
Yeah.
so
The long story
I'm just
short,
making sure that I got the right message. So
you did. When the program was created, it was based off of a $20 million per biennium allocation to our fund to go spend on projects that provide uplift to the covered species.
Yeah.
The next biennium, our allocation was halved to 10 million with the same set of expectations of providing uplift. We currently are looking at, well, potentially not having any allocation from the general fund. So 20 to 10 to 0. So we would be relying on the timber receipts, which would be not more than 5 million for the biennium, likely a little less, plus the interest, which when the fund balance was in the mid 20 million mark, we received about 2 million in interest. So that interest payment would also go down because our fund balance that would be accruing the interest has gone down. So we'd be looking at an order of magnitude less funding. And Courtney's point is, do we adjust our expectations in the program? And that's something that we can all discuss here shortly. Did I summarize that correctly, Courtney? I don't want to be speaking for you. Okay. Did I miss anything, Sarah? Misrepresent anything?
Nope, I think that's right. And I'll try to stay on for later in the agenda when you circle back to the discussion, but just in case, I might just say that I think as you look at that 14.4, the decision point will be, what do you want to say? What do you want to say is the dollar amount available in the 2026 solicitation? As to whether or not you allow for land transactions, I think legislature directed us as a grant program to have that as an eligible type of proposed activity. And so we still need to build the infrastructure for it, even if in what you consider awarding, you choose not to because of available funds. But that would be an awarding decision rather than a rule adoption or a grant guidelines adoption, I should say. So just wanted to make that point, and then I'll be quiet.
Of course. And then I suppose, other things that we could look at are the amount that we decide to dedicate to those types of projects. Given our total funding balance, we could say, these types of projects are eligible if they're less than a certain dollar amount, or those are all within the purview of the committee, but we do need to have the pathway and they do need to be eligible. Correct. We also, as I was speaking to Andy earlier this month, when an emergency grant fund request came in, was made aware that we currently have no pathway to do that. So although we had discussed it earlier, there was an OWEB grant that ran into some issues. They hit a water table higher than expected, and they had an emergency request. When I reached out to Andy, I was informed we do not have a pathway or any guidance on that. So not only is land transaction something we need to finish, we also need to figure out what the guidance document will look like if we have another emergency request come in. Because we were unable to do anything for that organization, it would be nice if something comes up that we at least have a program in place to decide whether or not we want to do something there.
And when you originally adopted the rules for the grant program, we had an urgent grant pathway. When we did the last round of revisions with committee, we decided to remove that pathway. If in a future revision you wanted to bring that option back, you certainly could. It would take a rule revision to do so.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Sarah, or any questions related to the program funding? All right. Well, Sarah, thank you for providing that update. Although it's not great news, it is really important context for our work.
I wish I was bringing better news, but you know, when you look around at other grant programs, we're still a large one, and we still have a significant impact. So.
And it sounds like really the decision is going to be for the committee to decide what are we going to offer in the solicitation, so that applicants can tune their expectations to what the total solicitation will include, and also what we're willing and able to provide for the following solicitation in a best case and worst case scenario. Great. Okay. With that, I think we're ready for the next agenda item, Andy, which would be the fall field trip.
Chad, did we want to go back for public comment, as we were saying after Sarah's update?
Yeah, we can. Let's just, the standard public comment process.
Yep. All right. 3 minutes of public comment. For those who are online, you have 3 minutes to share, so feel free to raise your hand here if you're wanting to provide public comment. All right, Wendy, you're allowed to come off, if you can, you're welcome to come off mute, and your time will start now.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the discussion of the revenue challenges, and I appreciate your working on building out your program. I'm Wendy Gerlach. I'm a member of the public, for the record. I am a lawyer. I work on conservation transactions. I'm also on the Coalition of Oregon Land Trust Government Relations Committee, so I coordinate somewhat with them. Chair Washington, committee members, and ODF&W staff, thank you so much for all the work you're doing on this program, which is important. I know from my work that conservation easements can be a very effective way of creating uplift for the covered species under the HCP. I wanted to thank you for the accomplishments of your July meeting. Like, some of the points that really seemed like significant accomplishments were protecting riparian areas by including the upland areas, so that you can have a border to the easement that makes sense on the ground. As I think Mark said, a boundary that makes sense on the ground makes a workable program. So being consistent with legal lots is important, and I hope you make this explicit in your manual. I appreciate your recognizing that the private forest accord definition of forest land will apply for this program, something you talked about last time. The definition of riparian that you discussed, I think you've had a couple workable options. To my mind, it would make sense just to use the private forest accord rules definition 109, because this needs to mesh with that larger program. That said, the definitions you had before you, I think, were largely workable. Match eligibility is another point that you talked about. I feel like the part of the manual on that is a little excessively long. I think what's most important is that since match isn't required, that those provisions just be made shorter and clearer and provide flexibility. I also think it's important that the funds under this program are allowed as a match for other conservation projects to get leverage. About the management plan, there's stuff on that in the COLT comments that were submitted. The upshot of that is I think that the current management plan revisions are excessive, and that they could impose additional requirements on the landowner at a level that would normally be in the conservation easement itself. So I suggest you use the more typical form, which is having the agency, you, the committee, just review the initial management plan, and that any changes to that plan have to come before you. If you look at the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board OAHP template, which I just looked at online, it has a good section on management plan that, again, doesn't impose additional requirements on the landowner over time. Some places in both the manual and the template for the easement, there are places where it's like language more for temporary restoration project. So I urge you to just revise that over time.
You have 15
And-
seconds left, Wendy.
Okay. And finally, I just like to say in the easement template, I like the approach of highlighting the mandatory provisions and allowing the parties to the easement to determine the rest of the document. That provides matching it to the specific land and the specific project. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give comment.
All right, at this time, if there's anyone else on the call that would like to provide additional comment, please raise your hand virtually. All right, Chad, I'm not seeing any additional people requesting public comment, so I'm going to hand it back to you. Wendy, I'm going to ask you to come off camera if you're not providing additional comment. All right, Chad. Yeah, that's it for public comment. Should I move on to the field trip update?
Yes, please. Thank you, Andy.
Okay. Chad, hopefully you're seeing the screen come in, my PowerPoint.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Just get my notes up. All right, everyone. Well, good afternoon. For the record, my name's Andy Spurker. I'm the Private Forest Record Grant Coordinator here at ODF&W. For the next few minutes, I want to walk everyone through what we have planned for an upcoming fall field trip on September 1st to Milton Freewater in the northeast portion of the state, which is next month, around the corner. All the information I'm sharing today, of course, can be found at pfagrants.com. And if any of the member of the public is listening and is interested in joining, please be sure to reach out and coordinate with me prior. We are going to be behind locked landowner gates, so there is no public access to this site if you do not come in with the group. So again, any members of the public interested in joining the field trip, please be sure to contact me well in advance. So as my staff report says, our focus for the day will be out in the Walla Walla Basin near Milton Freewater. We're going to look at landscape scale process-based restoration, some river corridor reconnection, and of course discuss some critical habitat created and maintained for the Private Forest Accord Habitat Conservation Plan covered species. We'll be touring a project location that we funded through 2 different PFA grants over the last few years, one of which is complete, the North Fork Walla Walla River one, as you see on screen here, for $819,000. To kick off the day, the field trip on September 1st, we're gathered at the hotel lobby in Pendleton. It'll be very similar to last year's field trip. Shuttles will be departing from the hotel lobby about 8:30 in the morning. We won't have a sit-down breakfast ready for you guys that morning, but coffee, pastries, and snacks will be set up in the lobby starting at about 7:30 again. We'll be there about an hour early, so you can grab something before you load up. Of course, you're more than welcome. We'll be in Pendleton to go to find breakfast on your own, as long as you get back by 8:30. Our first stop will be the Walla Walla Basin Watershed Council's office for a quick pre-trip briefing and multimedia overview of the project and its many phases and reaches, keeping in mind that it's a large watershed scale restoration project with multiple funders and stakeholders. So the pre-brief in Milton Freewater at the grantee's office will be very helpful in setting the stage for the day. After that pre-brief at the grantee's office, we'll head out into the field across a total of 4 site visits in the field. They're about a 20-minute drive from the office, so it is a significant amount of less driving compared to the last field trip. Throughout the day, we'll be looking at some in-stream complexity, engineered log jams, some braided channel networks, and some other enhancements. In terms of physical requirements, please expect about a mile or less of total walking alongside an active river corridor. So please bring some sturdy or rugged field boots if you have them. We're not going to be waiting or anything. But if walking the distance is a challenge, we will have shuttle support available between each location, along with the porta potty and snacks and drinks throughout the day. The goal is that we will be walking and talking along the side of the river on a dirt service road. So we should really be on this service road most of the time. And then as we make one of our field stops, we're cut off from the service road appropriately into the restoration as we approach each of the stops. Of course, just like last year for last year's field trip, we'll hand out pre-trip field packets, hopefully a few days, if not a week beforehand, so you can review project details in advance. Snacks, drinks, a brown bag lunch will be provided to keep you all fueled for the day. It'll be with us in the cars all day, similar to last time. We plan to wrap up the field portion of the field trip between 3:30 and 4, dependent on conversation. So that's about 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m. We'll be kind of with the grantee doing the tour and everything. Afterwards, we'll wrap up the day together at a committee dinner at a local restaurant in Pendleton, meeting either at 6 or just after to confirm with Tiffany on that. But we'll be back in Pendleton. Of course, all of this is very dependent on active wildfire going on in the area and smoke presence. So please just keep in mind if the air quality is too high or, of course, a wildfire is near, we will be canceling the trip. So I'll keep everyone posted the week prior about that and leading up to it. I'll try to get some early notice, but I apologize for any last minute changes. Other than that, we're happy to work with you guys to get carpooled out to Milton Freewater. Please directly contact me if we need to discuss that. But for the most part, we're expecting to meet you guys at the hotel and then shuttle you from there on. All right, that's all I had to say. I'm gonna hand it back to you, Chad. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments.
Okay. Any questions for Andy regarding the field trip? The two fires that are burning near Milton Freewater, I believe, are the Hagen Fire and the Paradise Fire. So if you're wanting to keep an eye on which fires would or could impact our field trip, those would be the two to watch. Thank you for the update, Andy.
Of course. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
For our next agenda item, looks like we are right on time. That is great. Andy, are you going to be able to pull up our guidance document and we can just go through the same format of looking at the document together, pick up where we left off and see how much progress we can make with our remaining time?
Yes, of course. Give me just a quick second to set this reminder about sending you guys your pre-meeting packet before I forget to do that.
Great. In the meantime, just want to acknowledge, Mark, it looked like you had your hand up during the funding discussion and maybe got missed. Is there something that you had to go back, or do you have anything you want to say on that? Mark Stern.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. No, Sarah kind of responded to my thought was that we need to finish this land transaction document. It's a second question on if we want to have a conversation about what aspects of, if we want to offer opportunities for these, for easements in an upcoming grant cycle or not. But I think before us today is to finish the land transaction document either way.
If we could finish the land transaction document today, Mark, I think that would be worth celebrating. We'll see how far we can get.
See you in Pendleton.
All right, Chad. Hopefully it's coming in for you now.
It is. Yep.
And
can you remind me, this document now currently includes all of the most recent comments and revisions from the committee. Is that correct?
That is correct. This has the most recent track changes that I sent out last week. It's also posted online, shared publicly. And I believe this is where we somewhat left off. We have our inserted updated definition here from the department.
Okay. So to begin with, on section 2 here, I think I had made a comment around the language we were using. Instead of using land transaction grants, because we are limiting this to conservation easements, I think it might be worthwhile to just use that consistent language throughout the document. And so that's where that comment of eliminating land transaction and replacing with conservation easement came from. Mark, you've got your hand up. Is it on that comment, or is it just a more general comment? Mark, we were hearing you through your phone number, but we're no longer hearing that.
Yeah, sorry. No, my comment is on the eligible land stuff, not the title of the section. So go ahead.
Okay. So is the committee comfortable using that consistent conservation easement language throughout the guidance document?
Okay.
Jock, you've raised your hand, thumbs up. I'm seeing another thumbs up. So I'm seeing thumbs up from everyone. I think everyone's had a chance to weigh in. Andy, are you able to go ahead and make all of those changes throughout the document?
Sounds good. So PFA grant conservation easement manual, that's what we're looking for?
Yep. And then also throughout the document. So the section that you just had highlighted,
Yes.
section 2.
I
And
will
any further references to the program, just find and replace land transaction with conservation easement.
Yes, I will be missing. So as you guys see it in versions, please let me know if I miss it. It's a pretty comprehensive update. But I will try my best to get it through everything. No problem.
Great. So if you could scroll us back down to that section 2 when you're ready.
Sorry for jumping around, guys. All right. There you go.
Right. We struck the projects must demonstrate meaningful and lasting conservation outcomes and habitat benefits for the covered species, and replaced with this language that projects must demonstrate meaningful and lasting conservation benefits for those species and satisfy the eligibility and evaluation requirements established in rule. That's chapter 635, division 97. I think it is helpful to have the rule referenced and just state that eligibility and evaluation requirements are already in rule and that these projects will follow that. Does that give anybody heartburn? Anybody think that's a good idea?
Say that again, what you're suggesting. Are you suggesting eliminating all of that language the department proposed?
I'm suggesting eliminating the piece that says projects must demonstrate meaningful and lasting conservation outcomes and habitat benefits for the covered species, and replacing it with projects must demonstrate meaningful and lasting conservation benefits for one or more covered species, and they must satisfy the eligibility and evaluation requirements that are referenced in that rule. Chapter 635, Division 97.
Yeah, thanks. That's fine by me.
Great. And Jock, you've got your hand up?
Yes, just to move things along, we should, I agree, we should use this language, the revised language. We should point out that anywhere there's a strike, it's in red, there's a strike through is removed, and the red that's remaining and underlined is what the new language is. So everybody knows that's what we're looking at from now on through this document.
Yeah, that's helpful, Jock. I think the colors are a little bit dependent on who made the edit, but if it's got a strike through, it is removed. If it's got an underline, it's proposed language that we can choose to accept. Good call out. Thank you for that. And then next, Andy, it's just again, land transaction, change to proposed easement throughout. And so then we get to eligible transaction types. And this, I think, is what Mark was hoping to comment on. And Mark, if you are ready, I can do that.
Yeah, sure. I guess just one clarification, the language in blue there is not really the comments that we all contributed here, but this is the department's rewrite of that section, which in some ways is helpful because there was extensive comments there and is a little bit beyond a just simple track change fix. So I'm okay with this. The one caveat I would make is I still think it's important to have some acknowledgement that the easement, while its primary purpose and characteristics should be for the riparian protection as described here, that the actual boundary for logistics and management purposes may include some additional adjacent uplands. And I provided Andy with some of that language. It was in a previous draft, but I just want to make sure we have easement boundaries that are practical, manageable, and make sense, and we don't get stuck with kind of stringy long easements that are difficult to manage.
Thanks for that, Mark. Chuck, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I like Mark's comment, and I think we need to make it clear that the outside of the riparian, including anything outside of the riparian area, is for the purpose of access and management, it's not part of changing things in the.
Yeah. Andy, are you able to capture that?
Yeah, what I'll do is look at the, yeah, I can capture it. I'll put in track changes for the next one. And Jad, just so everyone's on the same page, after today's meeting, depending how far we get in this document, I'll accept the track changes as we move past them. And then starting my edits tomorrow, based on everyone's comments and stuff, I'll do more track changes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that way we're not rehashing the same track changes.
And so, Andy, our forest land definition, this is the same as what is used in the PFA authors report and associated documents. Is that correct?
Forest land is growing from, I can't recall. Let me see. Let me pull up my notes where I pulled that from. Because I know we pulled this from DLC. Well, I have it right here. Department of Lands Conservation and Development. We pulled this one
Yeah,
from.
I'm clear on the riparian definition, but the forest land one is the one that I have a question.
Yeah, I have to pull up my notes there. Yeah, I believe that's been, I believe that's stayed here. So I think that's what we came up with earlier to use. And then we modified this one.
Okay, so you can just circle back on where that definition came from, which statute 527-620 is.
Yeah. Let me pull that up. I'll get back to you guys in a minute.
Great. Just want to make sure that we're not having some unintended consequences of how we define forest land. And if it's clearly forested, but the owner says that it's not for harvesting of forest tree species, so therefore it's not forest land, I think we just need to make sure we're really clear on that. At least have some tie-in of where that definition came from. Then we get into eligible applicants. And can you scroll us down a little bit?
Yep, it is. Do you want to go to conservation easement holders or just applicants right now?
College University. Did we get all of the eligible applicants in here that would be eligible as listed in the author's report?
Yeah,
And
I believe.
statute?
Yeah, from our primary. I thought this was from our primary application or guidance, like our primary implementation part of the program. These are the same applicants here.
Okay, and did you reviewed that administrative rule that I had referenced there in the comment?
Oh yeah, 635 is that's ours. So yeah, let me double check that as I'm pulling it up, but that's where I would have pulled it from.
We just reference the OAR so that it stays attached.
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. Okay. I can hyperlink it too.
Just since intent sometimes seems to get confused later on.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Do you have, I don't see tribes on the list, Andy. And that was one of the ones that I was,
Oh, thank you.
oh, there we go. Federally recognized Indian tribes. There you go.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Watershed Council, state, soil, private, non-local,
And then
federal.
I see nonprofit and private corporations.
Nonprofit, we got here.
Private corporations.
Yep, right here, or LLCs.
Okay. I think we're good. And I would just like the idea of tying it to the statute like Courtney had recommended,
Yeah, I'll update that language right here, no problem.
or administrative rule.
Yep, it'll go to the OAR.
Great. And then that way, if the rules do change, we're referencing it, it reflects the administrative rule.
That's no problem.
Ready to scroll down, Andy? Can everybody read the proposed language? Is it helpful if I read the proposed language out loud, or are we comfortable just reading it on our own and then accepting or rejecting?
Comfortable reading it on our own.
Great. I see a thumbs up from Jock and Courtney. I can't see the whole ribbon of participants, but does anyone have any objections or requested edits to this language? It's again just tying it back to the administrative rules.
Works for me.
Okay. Great. Next, we've got the nonprofits with the purpose or power to conserve, management, and protect natural resources.
Probably means manage.
Yeah, to conserve. Yeah, maybe to conserve and manage natural resources.
Well, I like the word protect as well.
Yeah, I like the word protect in there too.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that. I couldn't tell. It looked like it was crossed out, so I wasn't sure if that was part of the edit request or not.
Conserve, protect, and manage natural resources. Does that work?
Yep.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right.
And then Chad, just to go circle back, thanks Jennifer for the note. Up here, the OAR 527 is the definition of forest land from the Forest Practices Act statutes. Jennifer just confirmed it for me.
Great.
Okay, I'm just going to move through here. Do that later. All right, I think we're in a new section now. There we go.
Kind of moving around a little bit there, Andy. So property for mitigation, is that where we're at?
Yep, correct.
All right. This first, the first strike through. Can we look at the comment there associated, Andy? Can you hover over that?
All right.
The funds
Comment.
from PFA grant program cannot be used to acquire land to satisfy mitigation obligations.
Yeah, I don't have a comment associated with this one.
Okay. I just deleted it and then included the one below.
Yeah, mitigation preservation.
Just a clarifying question. Isn't everything we're doing in this program to some extent? Matt, I guess it's not. set aside some mitigation obligations? Maybe it's
Uh,
just at the conceptual level, not at this project level.
Yeah, this
I think what
program.
we're getting at, Mark, is that we can't be making payments to satisfy a mitigation obligation for a separate project. So if someone wants to fill in a wetland for development and they're then required to offset that with mitigation banking, we're not going to pay for that mitigation using our dollars and say that it's for our program if it's to satisfy a different mitigation obligation.
Yeah, I get it. I agree.
Yes.
All right, so then mitigation payments already issued but not yet implemented can be used as cash match for PFA conservation easement grants, but the grantee must attest being used in Americans.
I believe this was a request for us to clarify language after our last meeting.
Right, so I do support that a project funded through the program may not be used to generate compensatory mitigation credits to offset or account another compensatory mitigation obligation. That's basically another way of saying what we just said in plain English, that if you're required to do wetland mitigation offsets and you're obligated, you can't use these dollars to satisfy that obligation.
Correct.
But are we also then suggesting that our conservation easement funding would then also be qualified match for our program as well? Like conservation, but the grantee can be used as cash match for PFA conservation easements. Oh, mitigation payments already issued, but not yet implemented.
Correct.
Can you walk me through what that looks like? So someone is, say, paying for mitigation banking, and
Yes.
then we're saying that that is match for our program. How does that not get sideways with the second sentence there, that a project funded through the program may not be used to generate compensatory mitigation credits?
Sarah, can I?
Yeah,
I
okay,
think with the
so
second sentence,
go ahead,
go
Mark,
ahead.
please.
I was just going to say the second sentence says that our funding can't be used to generate additional mitigation credits, but we are allowing a mitigation project that's already underway on its own well-being to be considered match in an application that we're funding. So they can match us, but we're not gonna be used as match for them.
So
So
the
they're
way
receiving payments issued, so it's not prior funding, it's mitigation payments already issued.
right. So if you here's an example. If you have a development action that has occurred that had some sort of mitigation obligation and a payment has been made, like an in lieu fee payment has been made, that cash can be used as match on a PFA grant, as long as the grantee attests that the use of those mitigation dollars is consistent with whatever the compliance obligation was. We're saying that that's eligible, but we're also saying that you can't use PFA dollars to satisfy a compliance obligation somewhere else.
Yeah, that gets a little muddy for me. I don't really know how I feel about that, but if the committee thinks that that's an appropriate use of the funds, then I can get behind it. But I would like to hear from a few other committee members on their stance. So again, if someone fills in a wetland and is required to then have a 2-for-1 to develop new wetlands, they can pay an in lieu fee instead of actually doing that. The in lieu fee then could be used as match for our program to create a wetland. Is that right? Well, this wouldn't be wetland creation either. This is conservation easements. So can you, Sarah, maybe walk me through an example of how that conservation easement would be used to satisfy that?
Yeah, so there, a real live example is in the post Paulina Valley. There were conservation easements proposed on a ranch, and they put together a few different funding sources. One is the local land trust had received a mitigation payment from a solar development somewhere else in the county. And that mitigation payment, it was all brokered and discussed with ODFW. So the payment came from the solar development and was brought to the table as the matching funds necessary for an NRCS easement grant that the applicant was going for. Between the federal easement grant and the 25% mitigation match that the land trust had, they had the full amount to purchase that easement on the ranch in the Paulina Valley. So that's the kind of scenario where, as long as everyone's clear that, that the NRCS funds are not being used to meet a compliance obligation, everyone was comfortable with that scenario. So that's the kind of situation I'm thinking of here. And it just can't go the other way where you're using PFA dollars to satisfy some mitigation obligation somewhere else.
So in that example, when the project, say it's the solar farm, has an obligation, they put their in lieu fee up. We put our money up to conserve a riparian area on
Yep.
non-forest land, specifically to provide uplift for the covered species. That project then goes through. How do we not violate that second sentence of a project funded through our program may not be used to generate compensatory mitigation credits to offset or account another obligation?
The 25% mitigation payment satisfies the mitigation obligation from the solar development. The PFA funds would be above and beyond whatever obligation that was required, that required the payment. Does that make sense? So
Yeah, I'm just not sure if the language captures that, because we're saying that a project funded through the program may not be used. But what we're really saying is that our funding of the project may not be used.
so typically with a mitigation payment, like I'm describing in lieu fee, the payment
Is
the
meeting it.
satisfaction of the mitigation obligation.
Yep, got
It's
it.
not that the work has to be done in order to generate the credit.
Right.
They
The obligation is
done
mitigated
after they wrote the check.
once the payment's made.
Right.
Great. Courtney, you've got your hand up, and then we'll go to Jock.
Actually, those last couple sentences were helpful. I think I'm trying to bring it up a level and sort in my head around what information in this category we might want from the applicant. Is it that what we want is we want to receive information about mitigation dollars differently from someone who has raised true cash match? You know what I mean? Is it that we need to see that differently when it comes in, so that when we are reviewing, we can apply what we're trying to talk about right now to the review and scoring? I think that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if clarifying this is to do a better job of getting clarity from the applicant about the theme of this money.
Jock, you've got your hand up.
My question is how deep we want to get into the source of the funds that the applicant is using in its application. I can see if the applicant has some sort of business or financial relationship with the entity that had to make the mitigation. But if they're totally independent and that was considered like a cash donation from the person with the mitigation obligation, that would, shall we say, firewall it from what our interest is. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, Jock. I'm not sure if that's appropriate or not, because according to Sarah, it's once the payment is made in lieu of the conservation action. Is that what you mean when you say in lieu, Sarah? So in lieu of that conservation action that provides the mitigation credit, they can make a payment. And I guess it doesn't really matter to us who is making the payment, who's receiving the payment. What we care about is that our grantee is not using our dollars to satisfy compensatory mitigation obligations. And that's right out of the Division 97 rules. And so I think that piece maybe doesn't matter as much. It's really about making sure that our funds aren't used to actually do the conservation action that's required as a compensatory mitigation credit. So it's fine, as Sarah has outlined, for that in lieu payment to be used to do the things that our program is focused on, because there's no strings attached to that money. It's in lieu of the conservation action. Is that a fair characterization, Sarah? And apologies for not being real clear on this.
No, you're doing great. And I guess the only thing is like no strings attached. It's like there may still be an expectation that whoever the recipient of those in lieu fee funds is going to use them in a manner consistent with whatever was required of the mitigation. And but there's not going to be they're just going to attest that yes, we intend to use them in the same county, in the same habitat type, et cetera. But it's they don't need to implement and then generate credits off of it. It's just a payment made.
And then to Courtney's point, I think go ahead, please finish.
To Jock's point, standard practice in the grant program to ask about the nature and source of any matching funds. So it would be like any them bringing forward any source of match, we would want to know, and I where it came from, and then we'd have this attestation that it's clear to be used for this purpose, and we're trusting them on that. I think we felt like it was also important to have in here because it's not uncommon for mitigation dollars to be in the mix when organizations are pursuing acquisitions in particular. So it's a fairly common matching source for this type of grant.
Mm-hmm. So
clarity is warranted.
Would BPA funding fall in this bucket?
Oh, now you're really testing me.
Well, let's not do that because we don't need to.
I'd have to follow up. That one's like
done.
Even more
no big deal.
I'd have to follow up on that one.
Scott, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, well, am I correct in remembering that we're not requiring any match for these conservation easements? Was that right?
Yep.
Okay,
That's right.
Seems like that first sentence is what we're getting wrapped around the axle on, and perhaps if we just eliminated that and kept this, the second sentence seems abundantly clear to me. Like, you are not to use PFA funds to count for something you're supposed to meet because of another mitigation obligation. So I don't know. My suggestion might be to eliminate the first sentence, and if we get into a sticky match discussion, we can deal with it at the time. A thought.
I'm good with that, and that second sentence comes right out of the Division 97 rules. That funding for or the PFA mitigation fund shall not be used for any prior or current compensatory mitigation obligations, and that habitat projects funded cannot be used for the purpose of generating compensatory mitigation credits to offset other compensatory mitigation obligations.
Yeah.
So that second sentence is right in line with what's already established in rule. And that rule is referenced above. So I think that's all helpful. Are we comfortable with that as a committee, removing the first sentence, retaining the second, and retaining the reference to the rule?
I'm comfortable. I think the question is the department comfortable with it?
Before we hear from the department, Courtney, do you have a point of discussion?
I guess back to the clarity question. I think what the first sentence for me, the language of match as opposed to something like a project funding source, I still have interest in having how that's identified as a project funding source. And then I guess some clarity around, is there clear distinguishable differences between the benefits associated with those dollars towards the project versus the PFA dollars. And so I'm kind of still coming back to where this information is helpful in this system where these funds do mingle and cross, and making sure that when we're receiving requests, we can clearly articulate where the distinguishable benefits from our funds are coming into play in the nexus with these mitigation payments already issued. I guess that's my trying to get that out of my head in a way that makes sense with this not being my subject matter expertise
I
area.
think that's a valid concern, Courtney. And to Scott's point, I think that we can probably tease some of this out in the actual applications and the evaluations of the applications. And that's also where we would be answering the but-for question. Without our funding, would this happen anyway because it's a legal requirement, or
Yeah,
the compensatory
that's the
mitigation
summary.
is an obligation?
Yeah.
And so if it's already an obligation, is our funding meeting that but-for or not? Feels more like an evaluation, like of a specific grant with their unique set of circumstances that they're going to propose, rather than trying to make a rule to do that or guidance to do that. So Sarah, back to Mark's question about the department being comfortable with where we land. The department put this language forward, so if we leave it as is,
I think
thinking it's probably good.
it's fine to remove it. It's good that we had this conversation, because if it comes up, you'll kind of have a little bit of background and understanding to the department's recommendations on how to manage the the evaluation. If it creates more confusion than it is helpful, I support just taking it out for now. And it can be the kind of thing that if an applicant is wondering whether they should include it in their grant application or not, Andy can kind of coach them on how to frame it up.
Okay. Okay, so the proposal is to take the first sentence out, leave the second, and leave the reference to the administrative rule.
Oh.
The department's okay with that? Is the committee okay with that? Seeing heads nodding, thumbs up. Okay, I think we're ready to move on, Andy.
This was just noting that some of these edits, was the public requesting more clarity on when the 5-year deadline starts for this section here. Sorry, let me get out of your way.
So what is the gray, Andy? The grayed out section?
Oh.
Where did that come from? Why is it gray? I guess is the
That's
question.
just your comment graying it out. So I think you were just asking for clarity, which I've provided. So there's nothing new in this section. It's providing clarity on the intent of it. So the project timeline starts from date, and that the public had the same request as you, and I've updated it throughout for more clarity. So 5 years start from agreement execution. All projects, easement acquisition will have 18 months to record a conservation easement following the execution of the grant agreement. So I've just clarified those timelines.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any additional action here. That's just an FYI. We're all right with that. And I think I've addressed your stuff here.
Okay. Next, looks like we've got a comment from Scott. Is that correct?
Yes. And I think Joe, I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't see your, I think I just explained this, I believe.
Yeah, that was reconciled with that last piece.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
guys. Moving
So
on
then moving
through.
into the phase projects.
Yeah, I think we talked about that last meeting, and I think it kind of it fell flat for most folks. It's something that in my previous world was important in terms of how to focus restoration dollars and build restoration momentum in a place versus I think I described it as the shotgun approach. But this isn't what I'm going to fall on my sword over. Just throwing it out for discussion.
All right. I think you're right. We did have the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And you're comfortable if we leave this as is, Scott?
I am comfortable with it. I think, given a point or two, like we talked about doing some adjustment of our scoring system, and perhaps even adding a new category of, and it doesn't have to be a weighty point scoring. It could be similar to match, no match, 0 or 1. I mean, something as simple as that, just to give a slight nod that, hey, we judged you worthy before. You're in a worthy area. You're doing a great project. And here's phase 2. Awesome. That's going to be even better. So again, just a thought.
That's a good thought. And I think that we can leave the guidance as is. And as we look to the evaluations and the scoring, we could look at, and this would be true not just for conservation easements, but for all projects, adding a point if this project builds on prior PFA funding projects in the area. Is that kind of what you're saying, Scott? If you've already done good work and this is building on a previously funded project, maybe we would like to know that, and maybe we would like to add a single point to the scoring criteria that if you are building on past projects, that's a good thing, and we'd like to prioritize that.
Yes.
Okay, so we can leave this as is, Andy, with the context that we should still capture a way to build on past projects through the evaluation and scoring criteria. Joe, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I like Scott's comment, and I agree with the flagging of it for the scoring sheets, and just I feel like there could be maybe some recognition of a cumulative impact that could be greater than one single project for multiple phases that should be recognized. So yeah, within the scoring sheets makes sense right now. Thanks.
Cool. Yep. I got that on my notes, so I can work to update the scoring sheet in that draft too. So actually, I'll remove it here, but I got it to update it.
So if you had 2 projects that were in different geographies, each with a conservation uplift unit of 1, if those were, say, next to each other, their combined conservation impact might be a unit of 3, not just the 2. I think we can scroll down, Andy.
Just again, me just highlighting my edits. The committee asked for that, so this was just for additional clarity. Nothing major.
So what was that?
Oh, let me get out of that view. Sorry about that.
Scope of work, the grant application. Do not lump charges unless elaborated in the grant application.
Yeah, I just
That's
exchanged
good
scope
there.
of work for grant application, so they were just requesting that we keep standardized language. That's grant application.
Mhm.
Makes sense to me.
Yep.
Okay.
Then what is this one?
Okay, the applicants on, let me see, page 3 above, it's the contact table. Oh, might be worth including a sentence saying that if there's any question, yeah, for them to reach out to a coordinator. At the top of this, we have a table with all the contacts. So it's a few, I don't know if you guys seen it. We certainly can add it again.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. I think we're ready to continue to scroll down through the document, Andy.
Let me know if I missed any track changes, but this is the next one I'm seeing.
You've got that.
Let me read that. Clarify the eligible acquisition payment is the lesser of the appraised.
Yeah, just clarify that it's the lesser of the two.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying on that. Yeah, whatever the
You're
appraised.
saying it can be one or
can't
the
more
other,
than the
but if they negotiate the price down, but the appraised value is higher, they can't request the higher value, even though the price is lower.
Yeah,
Because right now this leaves that open for that.
Yeah, I'll incorporate that. I didn't incorporate that.
Okay.
Mark, I think I see an edit here from you under transaction costs. We're under, just so everyone sees it in case you missed it, eligible. I'm just scrolling up to this eligible cost section. That's what we're under right now. And Mark, you got to due diligence.
I just had if you can have environmental due diligence, it seems like due diligence for, to meet
SHPO.
SHPO requirements would make sense to include as well.
Yeah.
And I think it is called out down below. There's some duplication of sort of what's in and what's out at different places, but I think it just goes with the programming there.
I don't mind it being plain language. I classified it under just a survey, but yeah, we pay for SHPO for other stuff too.
Yeah, so surveys are legal descriptions. That could also be a survey, but this is explicitly calling out the type of survey, not just a land survey. Okay.
We're in indirect cost rates now. The public just asked for some revised clarity on it. Strikeout was the original language. This is capping contractor costs at 15% of the total contract cost.
Yeah, Andy, you and I have had some back and forth on this. I think that part of it's fine, and maybe it gets, as it goes on, I think there's several paragraphs where the application asks for the applicant to detail the specific line items of their indirect costs, and my comment was simply if an applicant has a federally negotiated indirect cost rate of X%, we accept it, or otherwise we go with whatever they propose up to 15%, as you have written right there. But like our other grants, we don't ask them to keep track of it. And part of the reason of having a federally negotiated indirect cost rate is so that you don't have to go back through and keep track of it all the time. And again, I think we should just follow the same practices we have with our other mitigation grants or other grants from the PFA. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a lot more detailed requests of the applicant here than in our other process.
I think there was previously, and I think I addressed that in this one. And I could be mistaken, but you made that comment before, and I've agreed with it. that we didn't need to go into extraneous detail about it. And I think this is now this section that we're looking at, where it's just these two. So we no longer are requiring them to list it. But you are correct. I think the last version, it said that. And I didn't see any need for that. And I think we had a
Andy, can
discussion.
you talk through that next piece? I mean, that's a major difference in what the project will end up costing. So it looks like there was original language and then it was struck through. Can you tell me where the original language came from and why it was struck through?
You're talking about right here?
No, the next one down.
The purchase price of a conservation easement not included. I didn't make this edit. Mark did.
So
Yeah, I guess my
where
point
did that
there is
language
that,
originally come from?
Oh, that was just an original, as I was building the program a few years ago, would have put it in there as that. That, like I said, just what the committee wants to move forward with recommendation. It was just a starting point.
And then Mark, what was the reason for for rejecting that?
Well, I was just making the observation, I guess, that OWEB, I believe, does not allow for the purchase price of the easement to be included in the calculation of indirect cost rates, but the federal agencies typically do, be it NRCS, BLM, or Fish and Wildlife Service or others. So I was throwing it out there for conversation, just to make sure we realize that some do and some don't. It's not completely black and white.
Yeah, I'm looking at my response. I guess the biggest thing is I said grantees may assume they can claim indirect costs on the purchase price of the conservation easement itself. Which if I recall, I think I would have concerns that could, if we only pay for the appraised value, you shouldn't claim indirect on the purchase of that, because that could increase it above the appraised value.
Mm-hmm.
Technically speaking, but it would be in their indirect costs. So
the indirect costs are always going to be above the appraised value.
It's just that
unless they're not included, they're not included with the purchase price, right?
Yeah, so how we have our budget separated, there's different categories, and one category will say purchase of conservation easement, and they will list the line item purchase of that easement, and the calculation as is, if we stayed with it, would not include that purchase price and that 15% indirect. It would do everything else in their budget table except the conservation easement purchase price.
I'm okay with that. I'm just putting it out there for others to comment on if others feel differently. But I'm okay deleting it, but I just wanted to have everybody be aware that that's not necessarily how federal agencies do it. It is how OWEB does it.
Great. Courtney, you have your hand up.
Yeah, maybe for the time being, in support of deleting it, this is one of those examples of places under the kind of a new lens at the revenue, the available funds for the program. We're limiting some of this. Could have value.
Yeah, limiting the indirect costs that are considered eligible.
Yeah.
So Mark, are you okay if we leave the purchase price of a conservation easement cannot be included in the calculation of indirect costs in the guidance document, and to still allow for the other eligible indirect costs, and to include that language you recommended about the negotiated rates and maybe a little less detail being required? So the blue that you have there.
That works. I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't see it.
Well, a couple of questions there. Yes, I'm okay keeping that deletion as it shows on our screen about the purchase price of conservation easements. And then, does it allow for an applicant to go up to their federally negotiated rate if it's above 15%?
Yes, unless I have the unless being the caveat here.
Yeah, I'm fine with those edits. They look good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is everyone else okay with that? Okay. See everybody's head nodding, thumbs up. I think we're good through this section, Andy, and down to the next comment. Looks like a comment around pre-agreement costs.
Yeah, there's some questions I believe in previous versions. And this is coming from May, so we're getting part of the document that we didn't get to in our last meeting. So just keep that in mind. We might have addressed some of these comments ahead of us. While this says pre-agreement costs, they can also list these as line items in post-agreement costs too. There's just some question about it, so it's kind of dead on arrival.
Very good. Cultural resources may be required. That's all pre-agreement costs. That's all allowable.
Yep. I'm gonna move on through with that then. This was just flagging an edit from our real estate team.
Mm-hmm.
Just technicality stuff. Again, nothing substantial.
Yeah, that'll make sense.
Okay.
Older than they also sign off.
Looks like I've handled this comment in post-closing costs. It's too many means costs incurred after the easement transaction. The wording seems odd. Update this and provide clarity. You are correct. It is post-recording of the conservation easement. So the blue is my updated language. Yeah. And there was no language before. I just added it in following Mark's comment.
Right, so as part of their application, they could include the cost to develop their property management plan, even though we do expect them to have a property management plan in the application.
Correct. It's a draft in the application because it is a substantial lift, but they're able to include the cost of developing it post award. So post we sign that agreement with them. That's staff time. Pretty standard. We do that with like our management plan, implementation management plan now.
And then the cost of securing and maintaining the conservation values, is that not a different implementation type grant?
Maintain the conservation associated with the property interest in accordance with the application of property management. So, yeah, this is kind of getting at the template, conservation easement template that we haven't gone into as a committee yet. It's on our docket, but we have something in there called conservation values that are discussed in the easement, ultimately. And so what this is giving them allowance for is them to maintain those conservation values that they are going to put in the easement for the duration of the project.
Mm-hmm. It's a one-time ask for funding to do that.
It could be varied. We could say, their project's done within 5 years. Say they get the easement secured as determined within the mark, 18 months. And then from the 18 months to the 5-year mark, they might want to use staff time to maintain those conservation values outlined. So that's kind of my idea of how it would work. It'd just be like anything else, and we'd reimburse them on staff time.
How does this not open us up to trying to create some kind of funding for maintaining those values in perpetuity? Like, when do you close this out?
Yeah,
what costs are considered post-closing and what costs are considered ongoing?
That's a great question. So there is no sideboard. They could request an advancement of funds for it, and that could, we could add limits there. We could say that they have to spend that funds before the expiration of their agreement, and that could solve it too.
The expiration of the agreement would be once the conservation easement is secured?
Correct. They have 5 years to do the entire project. And they could decide to make the expiration of the agreement on that 5-year mark. They could also decide when the conservation easement's secured, they're ready to go. And they're like, no, we're going to be done with the project then, which my understanding is most of them are done by then. But
Courtney, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I guess on this one, is there a way that, so if we're looking at approving this project it's based on achieving outcomes which are within the value proposition of this grant. So is there a way to, I guess, that these costs must somehow be specifically identified as they're attached to those grants kind of award values? Essentially that like routine,
Yes.
unrelated outcomes aren't eligible. I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out is there a way to discern where some of the unrelated activities from this grant get discerned from just routine property management expenses or organizational outcomes?
We certainly can add guidelines on that. I think it might be a larger burden for
okay.
a grantee to do some of that because staff time is just staff time.
Yeah.
But there is an application, and I'm pretty sure it would be carried over. There's a section that says describe ODFW funding or budget justification, and they should talk about their staff time in there and how they plan to use it to that level, if that's helpful.
Okay.
I think the saving grace here, it says in accordance with the application or a property management plan approved by the department. So whatever it is they're thinking about there is going to have had some review. It may be funding to build a fence, or whatever, but it's not carte blanche. It's got to be either approved in the application. They're going to say we need X amount of dollars for 3.5 more years to do Y, or they come back with a property management plan that says, you know, we got blackberries and noxious weeds all over the place and we need the money to deal with that. And the department says, okay. But it's not.
I think we should put a cap on it though, Mark, like the 5-year check-in point so that it's not bleeding into that payments in perpetuity. We also need to know what our obligations are going to be over time. So avoiding any payments in perpetuity and saying that post-closing costs are considered post-closing as long as they fall within the 5-year timeline where the property interest is secured. And anything beyond that would then just come back to us as an implementation project, and it would receive an extra point because it's building on a past funded project.
Yeah, that 5-year comment works for me.
So like something like within 5 years.
Anything that meant to be too restrictive, but just to put some sideboard on. We mean truly post-closing, not in perpetuity.
And just for clarity on that, do we want to say so the project timeline is 5 years after the agreement is signed. The easement, they have 18 months after the agreement is signed to do the conservation easement and get it executed. Do we want to put this 5-year timeline tied to the agreement or tied to the conservation easement execution? That's my next question.
The agreement, just so all the timelines start at the same time.
Okay, I will add that clarity here.
Having some consistency there will help everybody.
Yeah, I'll add in some language for that within 5 years of the execution of the project agreement. Okay. We'll move forward. I think this was brought up in a previous committee, I believe, at some point. I didn't put public comment. Normally I would. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't think it's necessary for us to review everything for due diligence, per se.
Yeah, but can you remove the brokerage agent fees? And can we also talk about removing the demolition of ineligible structures?
All right, so we're
Some of
in,
these just don't feel applicable to this project type, and so we should make sure that we're not creating confusion by including them here.
I'm in this section here. So yeah, you guys have definitely authority to see what we want to be included here. So you're recommending
It looks like Mark had a comment around the broker agent fees, and that
Yep.
is probably not really applicable here.
okay.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's Mark Hudson, and I think he's agreeing with your comment to take it out.
Yeah, it's a member of the public. So that we'd be removing that. Everyone sees that. Did you say another recommendation you had? I think I missed it.
Yeah, the demolition of ineligible structures.
Yep, right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So removing ineligible structures.
Mm-hmm.
So I did put an example here, but so okay.
NEPA costs, you had those in there.
Oh, Mark added NEPA costs in here, it looks like.
Yeah, I was just wondering wouldn't those come from a different project type? I mean, a conservation easement, that's not including fish screens or diversions or moving dirt. A conservation easement that's something different. Those feel more like implementation project considerations.
Yeah, I think the easement is, you're right. But some of these easements may come with some proactive restoration. I mean, I'm thinking out loud. It says, you know, you're gonna take out this road or culvert that goes in. I mean, the whole purpose of acquiring the easement is to do something to benefit the fish. So presumably there's some uplift besides just signing the easement.
Do you think that project would apply as a easement application, or would it actually apply as a restoration or improvement
Implementation
application?
project.
Yeah.
Andy, going back to our other projects, do they require NEPA, and do we have any consideration if we pay for them for putting in large woody debris or whatever we do on a restoration project?
Yeah, we certainly can. I will say there is some comments from the public at large expressing an interest in reducing the restoration language in this document, because they see it's just conservation easements. That's just some of the public comment that we've received to reduce it.
But how do we address NEPA in our other grant?
We pay for it. Yeah, we can pay for it if they want. If they want to put NEPA costs into it, especially for ESA fish screen, yeah, I mean it's a restoration cost.
I just want to make sure that we're not commingling a bunch of different project types and that projects are binned. And so a conservation easement project should be the conservation easement. And an implementation project should be the implementation. And they could submit multiple applications around the same project and note that they're tied together. But back to each conservation action should stand alone. And this feels like we're funding multiple phases of a phased project. I guess if there's a NEPA cost associated with a conservation easement, I can't understand where that would arise, but we could leave it in there. It doesn't do any harm. It just starts to feel like that's a different pathway.
I guess I hear what you're saying, but if there isn't restoration tied to a conservation easement, what's the value of the conservation easement?
That is the big question.
Agreeing not to graze livestock could be one. You know, it could be restricting.
A big one from
activity.
the HCP handbook, Mark, is when you sign over your development rights on kind of low in the system properties, the impact of development on the riparian area and the function of it is very real. And so if you were to just sign over the development rights as the easement is then doing that work. Like that's the uplift. There will be no development and no impacts from the development.
Yeah, I'm okay leaving it out with the discussion. I think some easements are gonna come in and have proactive activities connected with them, but we can cross that bridge when we get to it if it comes up.
Yep. How do other folks feel? Do we want to take it out? Do we want to leave it in?
I could make the case for either. I think leaving it in is confusing when we haven't quite sorted what we would do with the project, with the request that comes in that's maybe requesting dollars both for easement, securing an easement, and also for physical work. And so I hate to be like, let's revisit this one, but that actually seems like the question in front of me right now is what are we going to do when somebody comes in with a great project because it's both the easement and it's physical work? Is that going to be two projects? And so the NEPA language goes into the physical work. Is it going to be I don't know, like how are we going to treat it? Or what are you going to tell them, Andy, when they call and say, what do you want us to do?
My understanding from discussion with the committee is that those are two separate project types. We're funding conservation easements here, and restoration actions. We're trying to stay away from language that implies you should be involving restoration in it. That's been my takeaway from the committee's discussions.
So then the NEPA would come out.
Or active restoration, I should say.
That's all helpful, Andy. I think that's in line with what we're trying to say. And Sarah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and I don't mean to counter your perspective on this, Andy, but I am thinking about what I've seen, and I think Mark Stern is correct that you're likely to see applications come in that are combo deals that are requesting funding for multiple actions, one of which will be a land transaction and another might be restoration activities. I think you might see multiple actions proposed in a single grant application, and I can't make, in my head, for me, that would still be an eligible application to have multiple different types of actions proposed, especially since we're not creating different funding windows. We're evaluating all of the projects together.
That was my original intention when I created the guidance, was to actually have that. But we've been steered in a different direction. The public has expressed interest to separate it, just for the record.
Yeah.
But what have sorry.
I was gonna say, we
Courtney,
decided to use
go
the
ahead
same
and-
criteria, so I don't see a reason to have a separate calling form.
Courtney, you were about to speak.
Yeah, I guess I hear what you're saying about what the public is requesting. From just a historical, what is the committee kind of requested? That the separation, or?
I can't recall that off the top of my head, but I know when I originally drafted this guidance, my idea was that there would be a combo project, and we've ended up in this direction at this point. But it's been a long conversation. It's been like 2 years, so it's very difficult to know why we made a left turn when maybe we intended to be right. And by no means does that mean we can't change it right now either. But that's been my frame of reference moving forward. That's two separate project types.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate, Andy, to have the two separate project types. It doesn't mean that you can't have multiple applications in a cycle, right?
That's correct.
But all of this discussion is around whether we leave something in that's already included in the other, and we would only remove it if it's not applicable and causes confusion. If it feels like there's not going to be confusion, we can leave it in and move on, but we would still need to understand the applicants. Are they doing a conservation easement project or an implementation project? Or are they trying to do all three in one project and we choose to fund it or not? It does not allow us to say we're going to fund this part or that part. So if the applicant wants to say it's all or nothing, then that would be one application, correct?
Yeah, actually, good point, Chad. It's reminding me that we allow them to apply multiple project types too. So they could select like restoration and conservation easement. They'd have to do a big application, but it would be upfront what they're requesting when they check the project type. We do allow multiple project types to be selected per application. So they could do two separate applications, I guess is what I'm saying. They could do one application that has it all, and then they would answer our primary questions. Mm-hmm. It'd be up to them.
So after all of the discussion, do we feel like it is more clear to applicants to leave it in or to remove it?
I would say if it's in the previous one, we just leave it in and say, NEPA costs if approved or something.
Yeah, sounds good. I can get there, and some of the stuff just gets figured out in the evaluation piece.
I want to make sure, Mark, I didn't scroll past, I think. So monitoring costs. Is there any requirement for an annual monitoring report? Yes, we do have monitoring reporting, which we will get to shortly. When we get to that section, it's below. And then you get into stewardship funding, which I think we're going to get into next.
Yeah. The stewardship funding, I actually recommended we pull that out. And the rules authorize monitoring and maintenance funding, but we need to distinguish between that fixed duration project monitoring, similar to when we said, 5 years for the post project. And then what is the easement holder's responsibilities? And that perpetual endowment funding will have a pretty substantial effect on the available project funds. And I thought we had talked through some of this stuff in our last meeting about the appropriateness of endowment funding for these grants. Am I remembering that correctly, Andy, that we had talked through that?
We had talked through it. I'm trying to look at my notes. But I think it was the last meeting we talked about it.
It was.
I'm not seeing it in my immediate notes right here. I can't remember.
We talked about it a little bit in the context of, one-time initial startup activities, build a fence, connect a riparian zone, or something, noxious weeds. That was all part of what could be the original grant, but that we weren't going to set up. We weren't going to fund stewardship endowment funds.
I think that's right. I would agree.
And since we already outlined the post-project costs above, that would capture what Mark had just mentioned. I think we can remove the stewardship fund contribution item because we've captured what Mark just mentioned in the post-project costs. Does that sound right and in line with what you were thinking, Mark?
Yeah.
Is everyone else okay with that moving forward? See some thumbs, some head nods. Okay, Andy, I think you can make those changes. And then the new legal surveys, county. What was the comment from the public?
I just want to flag 5 minutes left in the meeting, Chad.
Okay.
Eligible calls also should the new survey boundaries, if they don't follow the property boundaries. As an attachment to the new legal surveys must be recorded with the county's office of property tax. Yeah, I think this should be may, not must.
I think that not, word auditor probably was intended to be appraiser. I think that's usually it's the appraisal office that keeps
Yep.
track of it.
Yeah, new legal survey for the county. Oh, okay. Appraisal, you're saying appraisal office on the property
Yeah.
title.
The appraiser's office, I think, is
Thank you.
probably often
Or
call
just
it.
say appropriate county
Appropriate.
office.
There we
Yeah.
go. That's even better. Okay.
And then Andy, under new legal surveys, say new legal surveys that must be recorded because these are eligible costs. So the eligible cost is any new legal survey that must. And
Okay.
that clarifies the public's comment about,
Yep.
is this a new requirement? It's just saying if it is something that needs to be done, it's an eligible cost.
Yep, I think that's all. I think that addresses their comments. Thank you, guys.
Then ineligible costs. I actually removed the ceremonial costs because I don't think we were intending to cover dedication ceremonies regardless of who's invited or conducting the ceremony. I think these dollars were meant to provide conservation, uplift, and real outcomes. Having dedication ceremonies or celebrations feels like costs that shouldn't be borne by this program. It's just my own thoughts.
Yeah, that was my,
the
that
applicant-
was my comment. I don't have a problem we making it ineligible.
What are others' thoughts around
I
that?
agree with Chad.
Wait, so are you making it ineligible or you're wanting to make
Right.
it eligible? Because isn't this the list of
All of the-
ineligible costs?
All of these are ineligible, correct? So we would say that ceremonial or entertainment expenses would not be eligible,
Yeah.
as well
Correct,
as
so you would
salary bonus
remove-
payments.
You would remove the strike through. You would
Yeah.
keep it.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So it would say an ineligible cost, ceremonial or entertainment expenses. Okay.
So as it stands. Okay.
The monitoring costs related to long-term compliance. The long-term monitoring have been ineligible in the past and other project types, right?
Optimized ineligible should be.
Post-project costs, we've already clarified, but this is long-term.
Yeah, we're not doing a stewardship fund or anything, so
Right.
I think that's resolved and removed. Or no, I moved it. I agree, I moved it.
So you would leave that in, Andy. You would remove the strike through.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Just consistency's sake, so moving through just language.
And then Andy, on this first one, I just had a bit of a hang up on this. Land with sufficient revenue producing potential to finance the project's cost. If we're talking about non-forest land, so say there's a farm, and the farm is generating revenue that is substantial enough to finance the project cost. But they could also sell it to a developer to make a lot more money or they could enter into a conservation easement. This language would say they're ineligible to do that. That doesn't feel like it's going to get the outcome that we're hoping, which would be to convey the development rights and keep it in a farm or some other land use. So can you tell me like where this came from?
My comments I'm going to go off of is it's just a relic from another when I was creating this by looking at other granting programs that I just brought over. So if the committee feels that we want to strike it, that's completely okay with us.
Open it up for discussion. How do folks feel about this language that if the land is able to produce sufficient revenue to pay for the project, that it would become ineligible?
Yeah, I don't see how it really applies, so I'd be comfortable dropping it.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Mark. Courtney, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I asked, I guess I'd answer with another question, which is, what is it we're trying to solve for here? With the addition of this language, I guess that was, I know, Andy, you said you brought it over from somewhere
Yeah.
else, but something about it triggered kind of you thinking it was productive, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just couldn't. I want to say it
Okay.
was some conversation in the past, but like I said, it's just been such long in development. It'd be me making some conjectures at this point from committee discussion.
Let me throw something out here. You know, from the standpoint of a small landowner, in theory, you know, let's say you have enough forest, you can live off of it, make a living off of it, and not a rich living, just live modestly. And the project would consume that money that gets thrown off. Then you're giving up your ability to make a living in order to do the project. The question is, or you want to say, okay, in order to do that, then you have to make a deal with a land trust and sign it over to the project area over to a land trust. I'm not sure that we want to force people into dealing with
And
that.
I think we need to remove this because the other question then becomes how do you determine sufficient revenue producing potential? That's not saying I need receipts. That's saying, well, if you were to allow for mountain bikers to come in and pay however much per mountain biker, there's enough potential. It feels a little subjective, and I think the committee can get behind removing that.
Yeah, and I think public comment recommended removal of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, let's remove it.
Perfect.
Okay. Then where's our next one?
We have a comment from Match here. I think we might have addressed this. Awesome.
Yeah, same. Mark's comment was, we don't require it, but we track it. And
yeah,
then
and
the
I think
edits
we
now look good.
softened the language, the requirement. It's not a requirement for Match now. I think that was where this originally came from, if I recall. We're okay resolving and moving forward, unless I'm
Yes.
misunderstanding. Okay.
Just a time check, just with a couple other
Oh,
meetings on
yeah,
the
we're
horizon.
overtime.
Yeah.
Apologies, Courtney. I try to be respectful of people's time, but just having so much fun with you all this afternoon that lost track of time. And it feels like we were making some good progress too. So
Sorry.
I think should be encouraged that we will get through this. With that, Andy, I think we should probably stop where we are.
Yeah.
And you can bring this back to us with the changes made so far. can look at doing the same exercise. We might want to schedule another meeting specifically with this as our one and only agenda item, just to get through it. That's something that we can discuss. But for now, do you have any record or housekeeping items before we adjourn this meeting?
Nope, we don't. I guess I'll connect with the chairs and we can talk about the next steps, because our next meeting is our field trip in September.
That's right. And we can have discussions at length. Any questions, comments from the committee? Okay. Apologies for running late. Oh, Scott.
I just had a quick one for, I think if Jennifer's still on the line, based on the budget stuff we talked about earlier. And I was curious, with the rapid decline in the amount of funds the PFA was going to get, if that's has the potential to impact HCP negotiations. Because oftentimes there's an expectation of you're going to do X over here and we're working on Y over here, with the idea that both are coming along together. But if one is dropping off, that expectation is no longer there. So we don't have to answer it now, just something to chew on and maybe come back and see if that might be an issue for us going forward.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And thank you all for joining and participating. It's been a good conversation. Thank you, Andy. And with that, we can adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, everyone.